was here before is still here. First up, we have approval of the minutes from October 30th and November 14th.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. First up, we have, well, the only two items we have tonight, two resolutions. The first is Resolution 4124, resolution denying the request for a sanitary service deferral agreement for the property located at 10056.
System or install a flood-proofed holding tank. The property owner has made a request for a deferral from the Mequon sewer utility to that lateral connection. Staff is recommending denial on the basis of the Code of Ordinance, which requires connection, and notes that there is a lateral otherwise extended to the property line, and is therefore recommending denial of the deferral. I will just note that should the Sewer Utility District Commission or subsequently the Common Council consider granting the deferral, it should be conditioned upon the execution of the template deferral agreement.
Thank you. I looked at this item last night, and this one has some parallels to another item we took up a few months ago for a different property. While there is a lateral at the curb, the structure is 800 to 900 feet away to the east. It's an abnormally long, narrow lot. So the stub for the connections right on Cedarburg Road, and the house is all the way to the river. There's also, interestingly, no way to relocate the house to anywhere that isn't in the floodplain, because almost the entire lot is in the floodplain, save for maybe a 30 or 40 foot section of the driveway closer to Cedarburg Road, where it's actually impossible to build a house because the lot's only 50 feet wide at that point. So I find myself in favor of granting another deferral where our policy says we would otherwise require one for those reasons. I think it ends up being just too much infrastructure cost. No one would reasonably spend in excess of $100,000. The last estimate I had was about $200,000 for a piece of infrastructure like this on the last property we voted for a deferral on. So I, for one, don't support the motion or the staff conclusion on this, even though it's perfectly in concert with our policy. It's too onerous for the property owner.
I'll second that.
It wasn't a motion. It's just an opinion. That could be a motion, though. A motion to deny the denial or approve the deferral. That's a motion to approve the deferral. Is there a second? Or are there any questions?
Second.
Just for the purposes of clarity, that includes the condition that Ms. Lundin identified, that the property owner needs to execute the appropriate form to do that.
I would ask the motioner if that includes that. I would assume it does, but I cannot attest.
Correct.
Thank you.
Accepted.
So a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Alderman Meyer, Commissioner Meyer.
So there's no designation in between, in the way it sets up right now, that it's just 200 feet of the property line, correct? It's got nothing to do about the structure itself?
Right.
Yeah, it's an oddity created by the fact we have a code that doesn't perfectly cover every possible nuance of the way lots are chopped up and laid out. This is just one of those really long, narrow lots that it's a highly non-conforming lot in a lot of ways.
So maybe we should take a look at changing that a little bit inside of ours?
When the new deputy utilities director is hired, I've requested a sewer connection policy similar to the water connection policy that would otherwise address scenarios just like the water policy did of defining which properties may be eligible for a deferral or exemption.
We can agree to put it on our own work plan. It sounds like when Kristen gets some help when that vacancy's filled, it's a good project for someone to cut their teeth on. I would agree, yeah. Any other discussion? If not, let's also call the roll on this item.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That resolution is recommended onto the council. Our next resolution is Resolution 4125, a resolution authorizing the designation of 2010 West Ranch Road as the replacement site location for the construction of Lift Station E on Ranch Road. Quick overview from staff, please.
Sure. You may all recall this is a project that actually started in 2020 after a condition assessment recommended the replacement of Lift Station E. Subsequent to that, staff went through a site selection analysis that took into account a number of parameters to identify the ideal location for a replacement lift station, and ultimately requested the Sewer Utility District Commission approval and authorization to enter into negotiations with property owners, either for easements or acquisition of property in association with that site selection process. Unfortunately, at the time, we were ultimately unsuccessful in negotiating either, and therefore requested the designation of some right-of-way at the end of Laguna Drive as the location for the construction of the lift station. That was ultimately authorized, and subsequent to that, there was a design contract for the lift station itself. In March of this year, staff became aware of the availability of one of the higher priority parcels that was a residential home that had come for sale. You may then recall subsequent to that, the Common Council authorized the purchase of that property, and we have since closed on that sale. Today, the discussion is surrounding the designation of that site as the location for the reconstructed or the new lift station, and then ultimately the decommissioning of the existing lift station. And we are requesting the designation of that at 2010 Ranch Road for, among other reasons listed, an infrastructure cost savings of almost $1.2 million, as well as minimizing the infrastructure impact given its proximity to the existing lift station, and the other reasons that were otherwise listed in your packet.
Thank you. Any questions from the Sewer Commission or comments they'd like to make? We've got anticipate a large number of people here paying attention to this item. We usually don't take public comment until the Common Council meeting, but usually the way we vote at the Sewer Utility District Commission is just echoed at the council. So I may break form here and just take public comment. Early, you've already been waiting a full hour longer than you anticipated because of other meetings going over. But let's get a couple questions out from the commission, and then I think I'm just going to dive into this pile of requests to speak. Commissioner Bach.
Could you please just kind of go over, what the kind of the lift station, the current, issues to neighbors. There was things in the reports about smells and all those things, and how, what will happen with the new station and anticipated, and any kind of issues you've gone over with the neighbors regarding those kinds of lift station issues.
The existing lift station was constructed in the 1960s, so both from a technology standpoint and an operation standpoint is well beyond its life cycle. So I would argue that nearly all components, whether that's related to odor reduction, electricity, energy efficiency, pumps, sizing, everything, are outdated and undersized. That's what the condition assessment otherwise indicated and warranted the construction of a new lift station. The new lift station would be constructed to modern standards, so would be more energy efficient, would have better odor control, and otherwise be quieter. It will be bigger, but otherwise operate differently than that was built in the 1960s.
I think it's fair to point out too that some of us weren't here when we discussed some of the details, but this new site will also have redundant power feeds, so in the event of a power outage, it is less likely to be impacted because it'll have a feed from 2 different substations, which is one of the annoyances now, is that when it loses power, it can't pump sewage, obviously, and we need to discharge. This lift station also causes a bunch of people's basements to fill with sewage upstream of it, which is also why we're doing this. This is definitely priority number 1 in the sewer utility now that we've gotten the East Trunk Sewer project in the ground. This is the next most important thing to reduce people's basements backing up with sewage. Any other comments or questions for staff? If not, we've got a bunch of these. I'll read them off. I'll read off the people who chose not to speak first. Michael Levin, 2041 West Ranch Road, opposes, does not wish to speak. Bill Limke, 2042 West Ranch Road, opposes, does not wish to speak. Brian Birch, 1930 West Riverbend Court, opposes, does not wish to speak. Kathy Lorenz, 11707 North Hillside Lane, opposes, does not wish to speak. Dixie Lowen, 2028 West Ranch Road, opposes, does not wish to speak. Howard Schleil, 1935 West Riverbend Court, opposes and wishes to speak. So please approach the microphone, and all comments are limited to 5 minutes so we can make sure to get everyone through here.
Five minutes is not a lot of time when you're talking about something that's going to be permanent in our neighborhood. So I may run a minute or 2 over. I hope you'll be okay with that. My name is Howard Schley. I live at 1935 West Riverbend Court. The Riverbend Homes Association, it was one of our 11 homes that you purchased. We did have a covenant with the city that said that no home in our association can be used for any purpose other than single-family residence. I was told by the city attorney that you can fix that. So apparently that's a factor here. But the existing lift station has been in place for over 60 years, and as neighbors, we do not dispute that the station needs upgrading. We do not dispute that the city engineers will do a superb job and that it will be an engineering marvel. We also do not dispute that the project has already been approved at the Laguna location, that the project is feasible at the Laguna location. And we acknowledge that the Laguna location, as city staff has mentioned, will cost a little bit more and it adds some complexity. Nevertheless, I want to reiterate, this is a permanent thing that we're going to be building. As your packet points out, the city had informational meetings with the neighbors. The neighborhood overwhelmingly indicated a preference for the Laguna site, and that was approved in October of 2022. Suddenly, the Maloney family sold their house to the city, and here we are. Now, the packet suggests to you there are some benefits. This is where we do have a dispute. One of the benefits they cite is cost savings. I'll come back to that. One of the benefits they cite is that the same neighbors will be adjacent properties to that are adjacent to the existing lift station will be adjacent to the new station, minimizing the impact. No, you don't get to say that. You don't get to say that, well, these people have lived with this thing all along, so they don't count. This is a new station, so we're going to talk about a clean slate here, and everybody gets to have a say. Now, if you build it, I don't know which one he's got here. you build it on the one on your left, your right, at Laguna, it directly impacts 3 homes with 2 more adjacent. If you build it on Ranch Road, which is what this resolution is for, there are 12 homes that are in close proximity. Those circles are the same exact diameter. We are the 12 homes. We are the ones who, and me personally, for 35 years have lived next to this station. And no, we don't get to get written off just because we have put up with the smell and the noise and the trucks and the raw sewage being dumped into our HMA pond for decades. Now, I didn't intend to get riled up tonight, but I read something today from city staff that I didn't care to read. Quote, existing residents impacted by the existing lift station E may be closer in proximity to the lift station if it's constructed at Ranch Road. By closer, I mean closer than if it's built at Laguna. But those residents are already impacted by the existing location. We're somehow tainted because we've already lived next to it. We are lesser citizens because of that. I think that comment was outrageous, but there's more. Staff went on to suggest that the Laguna site is less viable because the residents at the end of Ranch and Laguna who moved in or built next to the bike path extensions did not expect further infrastructure or development. I don't know how many of you know me, but for the past several decades, I have been in and out of this chamber with hundreds of my fellow citizens begging you not to let construction take place at the end of Ranch and Laguna. We lost that fight the last time around, and they're building 5 houses there. But to say that those new houses didn't expect to have something built at the end of Laguna and minimize the rest of us who are going to be in much closer proximity is rather outrageous. You also gone on to say that the station will be outside of the current bike path, and construction of the Ranch Road station will not disturb or interrupt the bike path's use during construction. Seriously? A few bike riders being inconvenienced outweigh an entire neighborhood who have to live with this thing forever? If you're riding your bike for exercise, I would suggest that making a longer route during construction is kind of doing you a favor. Building the lift station at Ranch Road, according to your packet, eliminates the need for closing West Ranch Road for construction of the connecting sewer. Road construction is a fact of life in Wisconsin. Avoiding a temporary inconvenience does not justify forcing this neighborhood to live with the Maloney sewer station forever. And the final point, again, is rather upsetting to me. If you build it on Ranch Road, it's less disruption to the residents in the area. Which residents are you talking about? The 12 that are in close proximity or the 5 at Laguna? Now, there's more about that Laguna site that you'll be hearing from my neighbor, Kirk Anderson, and the proximity of the homes in that area. But I can tell you, if you look at that map, and that's from Google, the location of the homes in proximity to the Laguna site are all farther away than the location of the homes at the ranch site. I don't want to steal Kirk's thunder, but he's going to tell you about some distances that he measured on that. If you build this thing in the center of our neighborhood, it's permanent. It's there this year, next year, 5 years, 10 years, 60 years, 100 years if you build it right. So,
Sir, we're at 7 minutes, so
Well,
please wrap it up.
does anybody want to give up their time for me? Okay. I want to talk about the cost savings. You've been told you can save $1 million. Are we going to hold a parade every year for the next century to remind people that we saved $1 million in 2024 and yet built this station in the center of these 12 homes? Because the building of the station is permanent. Now, I know $1 million is not something to sneeze at, but on this project, that's 10% discount. Building it on Ranch Road to save money gives you a 10% discount. On a budget that has a contingency allowance of almost double that. If you look at the budget numbers that I've seen, the total of the contingency line items for the Laguna project comes to over $2.1 million, more than covering the cost difference. And that doesn't include the tax revenue that you're going to lose by tearing down the Maloney house. That's a house in our neighborhood. And over time, that house generates tax revenue. If this station lasts 60 years, the $4,500 a year from that house is about a quarter of what you're talking about saving. For 7 of the 8 of you, this isn't your neighborhood, so you're probably thinking that your obligation is to save your constituents a few bucks. It's very few bucks. Because there are 10,174 paying properties in Mequon, according to the 2020 draft report that I saw online. If your vote tonight is to save those constituents money, you will be saving them $11.70 a year over a 10-year period by building at the Maloney site. Now, if you add it up in 10 years, you can buy a nice dinner at the Chio with a nice piece of cheesecake for dessert. I want to read something to you, and I didn't introduce myself, but I served on the original Mequon Visioning Committee in the 1990s. And we gave a lot of thought, I don't know if any of you have ever seen that report, but we gave a lot of thought to the future of Mequon. I see now that there's a comprehensive 2035 plan that's been adopted by this council. So I'm going to read your own words to you. Mequon is a city rich in rural heritage and natural beauty. It offers a government that advocates for its community members. That would be those of us who live in close proximity to that station. It promotes civic participation, which is what we're doing here tonight, and enjoys healthy economic base. In Mequon, our community protects the natural environment and values the high-quality neighborhoods. Safe community, public gathering spaces, strong education, medical facilities, all of which create an exceptional quality of life. Quality of life should not be sacrificed because someone riding a bike will be temporarily inconvenienced.
Okay, sir, we're at 10.5 minutes.
Anybody else?
Uh,
I'm almost done.
who's
Gonna
yep,
be here forever.
Yep.
So I'll be done in a minute. Quality of life should not be sacrificed because of a few engineering challenges. Quality of life should not be sacrificed for a 10% discount. Now, I'm asking you to affirm the Laguna site that you already approved. It is feasible. The Laguna plan was approved. The Laguna plan is feasible. The Laguna site is more remote and easier to shield. And the neighborhood wants the Laguna plan. We have from the start. And any vote to the contrary is a vote against our quality of life. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kirk Anderson, 1928 West Ranch Road, opposes and wishes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Kirk Anderson with my wife Jane, handing out some.
Could you,
Some
get a little
photos.
closer to the mic?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. And our family home is located 1928 West Ranch Road, which is directly east of the Maloney house. Just a real quick background of us. Both of our parents, built here in the 60s. We were both born and raised here. School at Trinity Freistadt, Lumen Christi, Homestead, Concordia College. After Jay and I attended college, we both moved back. We're married and extremely blessed and excited to find our current home, our log home, which is just a few miles from where we both grew up. When we moved here in 1999, very excited to be, part of this neighborhood, especially the small home association, which includes many acres of gorgeous land, a pond, and most importantly, amazing group of neighbors. We spent 20 years plus restoring and remodeling our, 1800s log home for our family. We have two children who are adults now who have attended, our same schools. Over the years, we have, like I said, had pleasure of such wonderful neighbors, and many over the years, becoming actually close friends. So, as some of you are aware, the downfalls of these, horrible situations dealing with the current lift station over decades. Situated, in the heart of our home lots. The noise, the stench, the city trucks entering and leaving at all times of the day and night. Of course, we were all happy to hear that there was, an approved Laguna site for the new station, which would relieve all of this. So you can imagine, well, you can't imagine, none of you can imagine the thoughts and the stress and emotions that all of us, have had since we've been aware of this possibility of this new lift station taking the place of the Maloney home. Again, when this association was developed, the city agreed and was printed in black and white that these lots were intended for single-family homes only. The pre-approved Laguna site for the new lift station obviously is in a much more secluded area with little to no effect on family homes and family life. So the city jumps on the purchase of the Maloney home to save the city some money. Which, seems that the only concern of the city is to save money instead of taking into consideration the overall concerns and quality of life of the citizens of this neighborhood. Like Howard had said, the amount of money seems like a lot, but again, after a few years, after 5 years, that money would be collected, absorbed, and forgotten about. However, the permanent structure will be here forever. To construct this new station at the Maloney House, you'd be leveling a beautiful property tax-paying home, leveling 50-plus-year-old trees that aren't replaceable with a few sticks and arborvitaes. So my wife Jane had handed out those pictures, 1, 2, and 3. And as you look at picture number 1, that's the site for the approved Laguna lift station. And this photo is taken facing east. So you see, with the abundance of trees and foliage, you can't even see the next closest house, which is approximately 80-plus yards away. As you look at picture number 2, this is the site for the approved Laguna lift station. This photo is taken facing north. With the abundance of trees and foliage, you can't see the next closest house, which again is approximately 80-plus yards away. Now, looking at picture number 3, that is taken from my lot line, which is approximately 30 feet from my driveway. And as looking at the Maloney house, it's only 17 yards away. So my question is, who in their right mind is going to level this perfectly beautiful property tax-paying home and put a lift station there at this location? Especially when these lots were deemed to be single-family lots. So I'm assuming that not one of you, perhaps none of you, have actually come out to see this site. Put your feet on the ground and look around. As you're standing looking at the Maloney house, you look to the west and you see the Lowen home right there. And to the south, the Vincent home right there. To the east, my home right there. To the north, the Schley home right there. So I want to make it clear, I'm here on behalf of all the neighbors, and I mean all of the neighbors, especially those of us who are pushing this lift station right in our faces, especially my home, which you're pushing right under our noses. If you haven't been to the Maloney home and haven't actually seen the very extreme close proximity to all of our homes, I would invite you to visit. I'm actually begging you to do so before you make this life-changing decision for us. So again, wanting to save money, putting the station there will only decrease the resale values of our homes. If this is only about money, this shows the city's true colors shining through, and I would suggest adjusting your mission statement for the city of Mequon. So a recap, there is a pre-approved site. And I say, do the right thing, put the station where it won't be seen or heard at the current approved Laguna location. Please put the citizens first and foremost over the savings. Do the right thing. Think of the quality of life for the citizens over the money. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Next, we have Barbara Levin, 2041 West Ranch Road, opposes and wishes to speak. Okay. Your 5 minutes went to first speaker. Got it. Next, Rebecca Barsh, 1930 West Riverbend Court, opposes and wishes to speak.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Barsh, and my husband and I, a couple of years ago, bought a home on Riverbend Court, and we are part of the homeowners association with the 12 homes that you saw in the picture. We bought it because there is a beautiful pond there, and it's an incredibly natural setting, even though it's just a few minutes from Port Washington Road and I-43. It's almost like being in the country, but being close and near to everything. It's a wonderful little neighborhood. And we walk it all the time and appreciate it. I think what I wanted to focus on is the fact that, you know, the only eyesore we have in our neighborhood right now is the lift station. And now the proposal is to replace a home that looks, you know, like it's part of the residential neighborhood with an even bigger lift station. And what we haven't talked about tonight is how much bigger is this intended to be. And my understanding is that it's a significant size difference. I also worry about the noise, and I know that city staff mentioned it would be quieter, but I guess I'm questioning how much work has actually been done to determine that. And what you can't change are the trucks coming and going and the noise from that. Also, the dumping sewage into the pond is not the best solution and smells after it happens. So, yeah, I guess we have all been staying tuned to this, and I'm just one of those neighbors who was thrilled that the Laguna Beach site was found that had a very small impact. And I'm asking for consideration that the council go back to that original approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Jeannie Vincent, 2005 West Ranch Road, opposes and wishes to speak.
Hello. So yes, I'm Jean Vincent. I live at 2005 Ranch Road, which is directly across the street from the Maloney property. Bear with me because these guys did a great job of explaining our concerns. So you're probably going to hear the same thing from me a little bit. You also may have received my email, which detailed my concerns. I did have an email conversation today with the Director of Public Works who responded to some of my concerns. I was left dismayed by a few of those responses. The first statement was to the effect that those of us who live near the Ranch Road site had already been living near the lift station, and therefore this project would have less of an impact on us than those who live near the Laguna site. I don't see the correlation. This is an entirely new project, should be thought of as such. The current lift station is small. It's set back from the road, and it's blocked by the house that would be demolished. You probably wouldn't realize it's there unless you were looking closely. If the home were to be demolished, there's no camouflaging or hiding. The new building will be as large, if not larger, than that existing house. The second statement was that there were residents who built or moved into homes at the Laguna site were not expecting any further infrastructure or development. As Howard kind of that's outrageous. Are those of us who live near the 2010 Ranch Road, you know, are we expected to have thought that there would be further infrastructure? The facts are that the property at 2010 Ranch Road is part of the HOA with a clause in the agreement that only single-family homes were to be constructed. The mayor at that time signed that agreement. It's perplexing to me that the city was able to overlook this clause and move forward with purchasing the house, knowing that they would be constructing something far different. If anyone were not to be expecting further infrastructure, it would be those of us who are part of or surround the HOA properties. I won't go further into the areas that others have already spoke about, except to say that the cost saving should not be the only consideration here. Both sites have their challenges, but to demolish a single-family home in the middle of a single-family street in a single-family neighborhood to construct a large infrastructure that, quite frankly, no one wants to look at or think about when there's an approved site that is set back from the street and surrounded mostly by undeveloped land, it doesn't make sense. We need to preserve our neighborhoods for what they are, quiet places to live, work, and raise our children. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last registered speaker we have. Is there anyone on this? Are you speaking on this item, sir? Okay. There'll be time for you later. Where you don't jump around items. We're all on this item still, so you'll have to be patient and wait a little bit. Questions, comments from the commissioners, or a motion?
Kristen,
Commissioner
can you
Tlaco.
just, what exactly is the size difference going to be on the lift station?
Unfortunately, I don't have a comparison to the existing station, although I might be able to get there. But we do anticipate it would have, no matter where it is located, it would have a similar footprint to the first floor of the existing home. I'm going to see if I can get I don't think the drawing I have is scalable.
So about the same size and footprint, but not 2 stories.
Correct.
How big
And-
is, how
Oh.
big is the lot?
The lot is 0.64 acres.
Commissioner Bach.
What about landscaping plans or shielding that? I mean, has anybody talked about that?
Yes, we have, and again, regardless of the location, we would do all of the above. At the Laguna Drive location, we'd have to remove an amount of the existing foliage to be able to build it, and then we'd otherwise screen it. If it was at 2010 Ranch Road, we would attempt to keep as much as we can, especially that facing the street, and work within the footprint of where the house is now.
Commissioner Tlaco.
My last question is, with the 2010 Ranch Road site, how much more, as far as future growth, development, sustainability, and like not having backups, does that location bring us versus the Laguna Drive lift station?
With respect to that, they should be similar. There's not necessarily a size difference to the lift station itself. I will just note, as the mayor did, this is just the next in a series of improvements, because there are actually multiple lift stations that discharge into lift station E. But it's the next improvement that needs to be done to achieve any reduction in either sewer service overflows or basement backups, both of which should be improved at either location.
Commissioner Bach.
Last question. Some of the residents talked about trucks and, sewage into the ponds and all that kind of stuff. How often does that kind of stuff happen, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Let's maybe not focus on how often it does now, because that is not anything that we wish to continue or otherwise replicate. So at the new station, both the trucking and the SSOs or basement backups, either way, should be reduced. I would not venture to say we would ever eliminate them because there can always be a storm event that oversees any design. But given what we've done with the East Trunk Sewer project and the number of basement backups that we've been able to successfully eliminate in that, we anticipate that either location would address that. Certainly the goal would be for the station to be built at the capacity that discharging or putting sewer service overflow into the pond would no longer be required. As it relates to the trucks, there is a little bit of a difference in the two locations. No matter what, we check lift stations weekly. That's our operation and maintenance to otherwise be sure that they continue to operate. That's during normal business hours. Both of them would have the dual feed of the backup power, so the need for generators that we otherwise bring during power outages should be reduced, if not all but eliminated by that process. The Laguna Drive location would still require the construction of a tank for water, so we would still have to come to fill that. That only happens about once every other month. That trucking wouldn't be required if we can otherwise utilize the well at 2010 Ranch Road.
Commissioner Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for everyone for taking time out of your busy evening for such a hard topic. I know this has probably been on your minds for years, so thank you for being here. This is probably going to be one of the hardest decisions I've had to vote on as I reflect on my 5 years of tenure here, and unfortunately I have 2 District 6 neighborhoods that are affected, and it does, neither neighborhood's going to be better off, right? So if this was in my neighborhood, if this was being proposed right next to me, I would feel the same way as you. But we're the policymakers up here, and that's why we're elected by the 25,000 residents to make hard decisions. So I'm trying to navigate everything that you've been saying and the hard decision in front of us. And I do agree it should not only be about money. We just had our strategic planning session, and we learned about the city finances, and we learned about the upcoming $8 million pool. And who knows how expensive all the new public safety facilities will be. So I just want the public to understand that the council is looking at some long-term expenditures and looking for savings, and I get how it must feel that perhaps you're feeling like it's at the expense of your neighborhood. I'm rewriting my speech as I go here, so that's why I'm talking a little slower. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote, so I'm actually talking this through with you and try to help you understand how challenging this is for me, and I'm sure my colleagues. The Laguna location is over 1,000 feet away, and so when I'm trying to compare the two, I am thinking about the disruption to the environment and running pipe across multiple properties and disrupting a lot of homes. Possible negotiation of easement rights associated with that. So I don't think the Laguna location is as easy as it sounds. It's a complicated project in and of itself. They're both complicated projects. They're both going to cost roughly $10 million. So, you know, putting in terms of 10% savings, that was an interesting way of looking at it, but it is such a largely massive project. In hindsight, I wish the acquisition process could have been handled more sensitively with the neighbors, but the negotiations with the seller were just so quick and truly did not allow for this. There was nothing council could have done differently other than not purchase the property or request an amendment from the seller, which seemed unlikely at the time. So here we are. I acknowledge that the benefits of, on paper, the Ranch Road location may seem to outweigh the negatives, and I agree that the negatives like smell, sound, and appearance will be mitigated through exceptional design and state-of-the-art technology at either location to preserve the character of either neighborhood. I agree, we shouldn't have used the whole analogy, you know, the lift station is is nearby now. And so it's those neighbors might not, they're already affected. I don't subscribe to that either, for what it's worth. I think maybe we're just trying to throw all the reasons we can to justify it. I don't think that's a good reason at all. Either way, I do believe that the HOA needs to be made whole for the loss of the HOA dues and for any upcoming negotiation of easements that will be required moving forward. The council should know that those costs are not factored into tonight's analysis, so that $1.2 million gap will shrink. Who knows by how much, but it's probably not enough to make up the gap, I would admit. I would think that if any of those economics or other factors would change, I would think that my fellow common council members would rethink their decision in the future, but right now, for this vote tonight, I do recognize that the economics are overbearing on my council's head. But what you said really did speak to me, and it's probably what I've been struggling with. This whole radius around houses concept originated when Mr. Schley and Mr. Anderson and I sat down with staff, and money is one thing, but how many people does it affect? And it's hard to say, oh, there's 5 people here and 12 there. I mean, you're all just as important as the other. So, I mean, we can't go by numbers. The more I think about it, we can't choose 12 over 5. I mean, you're all affected. When I look at the map, it is right in the middle of the residential neighborhood. What they're saying is true. It would be way better for this to be at the end of a subdivision, at a dead end. So here I am. I could go either way. I'm struggling. I want to support my residents. I've heard you. This is a hard decision for everyone up here. And I just want to assure you that regardless of what way it goes, no expense will be spared to try to make this right moving forward and to try to mitigate the impact on your lives, because all your points are valid. And so anything we can do if we go this route, I think should be done. We should spare no expense. If you don't want to see it, you won't see it. If you want it to look like a beautiful house, it will look like a beautiful house. But that's the type of discussion that the neighborhood needs to have with the city, and we haven't had that yet. So first we have to make up our minds, and I guess if there's any other comments, I'm getting ready to make my vote. I'm not going to be making a motion either way, and I'll be listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Parrish. Any other commissioners have any input into any of the concerns brought forward or the staff report, or perhaps a motion one way or the other? We'll be here an awful long time if we don't if you don't make a motion.
Question, if I could, please. How much time has been spent trying to work together to try to find out if there is a way to bridge the gap where this property would work with certain conditions, right? As Alderman Parrish said, it's not going to be an easy decision either way, but have we really looked at it and says, okay, we hear your concerns, but is there anything that we, the city, can do to help alleviate some of those concerns? Because at the end of the day, I think we all agree that this project needs to move forward. It's the best thing for the community. It's what the location is, and whether it be the appearance or whatever the concerns are, right? There's going to be a structure next to you either way. Is there a way for us to make this structure on this property in a way that would be appeasing to the neighborhood, to a point where we could create a win-win situation and work together in something that's a difficult situation and make it something that's a little bit more favorable for everybody, where everybody's got to give a little bit more. So my question is, have we had those discussions where we've really sat together and educated each other on the true concerns versus just saying no, 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 and really talking about how we might be able to get to a yes?
I don't, on behalf of staff, there hasn't been any, no. There's not been any requests related to screening, architecture, anything that has been, no. But I think either location is going to have those conversations with either set of impacted residents. Everyone is going to want to ensure that it is the highest and best use of the property that is otherwise available, and we would give equal weight to either of those locations as it relates to all of that. In fact, before this property became available, we were otherwise preparing to get at the point in design where we could meet out and stake out the location of the lift station so that we could have everybody stand in their yards and look at it from where they were and talk about where we either needed to plant trees or how we needed to, orient certain things or where we may otherwise be when this opportunity came up. If the location was ultimately selected for 2010 West Ranch Road, we would do the exact same thing. We'd need a little bit more time to vet through the location, but we would have otherwise done the same thing, is stake it in the field, meet with everybody out there, have the discussions about what their requests may be, what screening they may look for, and all of those elements. We would do those in both locations.
I want to just play off that for a minute because I want to make sure this is clear as far as how I'm thinking about it. And I'm in District 8. I happen to live in a neighborhood with 37 residents. And at the front of our driveway is a lift station. Literally, I come in and see it every day, and I leave every day and I see it. And I would say this, that every time we've had an issue, the city has been very accommodating and trying to work through that, right? It's one of those things that's a necessity in this community for us to live here and for everybody to go ahead and be able to appreciate the same amenities, if you will. And so they've been very accommodating with that. I want to, again, on behalf of the staff, this isn't a decision that anybody's taking lightly or that anybody's trying to go ahead and skirt around the issues. We really want to work with the community to figure out how we can get something that everybody needs in a place that maybe nobody wants, right? And that's not easy for any of us. And from where we sit here from a fiduciary standpoint, certainly we have to be thinking about the community as a whole. And I know you say it's not about cost, but there are some advantages for this site. And we have to take those into considerations as well as we make this decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Gebhardt. Does anyone else have anything to add or perhaps make a motion? Well, sir, this isn't really public comment is over. This really isn't a dialogue at this point.
But you asked a question about whether there's been public interaction. I can answer that. If you want some answer.
This is a highly unusual way to run a meeting, I think. I'll ask staff, since this is normal, have we met with residents and talked about screening and what the building may look like?
After the purchase of the property, 2 residents reached out and we did meet with them. We didn't get to that level of detail aside from the mutual understanding that all of those were things that would be addressed during design.
Okay. I think that's the answer. Yeah. Well, come on back up to the podium. No, come on back up to the podium. If I'm going to entertain this, we'll at least do it properly.
I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but there was a 1.5-year process where city did reach out to us. And we had multiple meetings. There were informational meetings here in the city council chamber with different ideas. We met with Kevin Driscoll multiple times, talked with him about the issues, talked with him about the screenings and the inadequacies of screenings. And that's how the Laguna location was arrived at. Because screening that location is a whole lot more viable than screening where it's crammed in with the 12 houses. So the interaction you're asking about did take place on that level. And this Laguna project would have gone through. You all approved it, except one day, a neighbor put up a for sale sign. And that's when the city jumped on that.
Well, those did occur. This is a 3-year-old process. Please sit. At that same time, we also consulted people if they'd be willing to sell their property. This is nothing new, trying to acquire a single-family residence in the area. The concept is as old as the project. That's the part that was left out of that. So yeah, we've been talking for a long time, and this site, as well as other sites, were also potential sites at that time. We just couldn't acquire one. And we weren't going to compel someone to give it to us by forcible means. We obtained it on a fair market. Opportunity knocked, and the knock was answered. So that's the other half of the story.
Mayor, just a quick follow-up question. So we're voting today on whether or not we want to move forward with this site, and then the process after that would be what?
Well, the process after that is actual site design. We have the design of the lift station. It just gets picked up from here and moved there. But none of the details of how to integrate it with the rest of the site have occurred because we haven't made this decision yet. Did I get that right? Or
Yes,
okay.
I was just gonna say, those public meetings that otherwise took place with respect to the Laguna Drive location would subsequently take place for the Ranch Road location. The mechanics of the lift station will remain mostly unchanged. It will be the architecture, the screening, those things that would be impacted by those discussions.
Thank you.
And just for my clarification too, Kristen, the lift stations in Mequon, are they all different sizes depending on the
Yes.
location? Is that how that works?
Yes.
I think we still need a motion. We're happy to entertain more comments or questions about the process.
I move to Resolution 4125 for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would just add, if we could, Alderman Gebhardt and my neighbor next to me, they both talked about design. So if we can include that in there somehow to make sure that we are going to do everything possible to make this,
I think no matter what site, that's our commitment. I mean, if you drive around Mequon, we have the nicest looking lift stations. There's one on Donges Bay I drive by every day. It looks like a small house. It even has cedar shake roofs in concert with the 2 subdivisions that it serves.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that's a friendly amendment, but Alderman Parrish and Alderman Gebhardt both made those comments, and if that's implied, that's great that, we can.
I'm happy to write it down because we're going to do it anyway. If someone would like to add that. Did the motioner and seconder agree that that is a friendly amendment we're going to add to the motion? I assume yes, but I can't speak for the motioner and the seconder.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And okay with the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Have to make that clarification. Administrator Jones.
Mayor, I may just opine that in terms of specificity, that's a little loose, and I say that with all due respect. Maybe the better way is to direct staff and the consultant as we move through the design process to bring that back here to the council for presentation and follow-up. And Director Lundin, forgive me if you covered this earlier in your presentation, but this is just yet another step in this process towards constructing the necessary lift station E. Design will go forward. We will bring design back to the council to get feedback. And then we will put together construction documents. We will bid the project out, and then we will have to award a contract for actual construction of the lift station. So there are going to be many other iterations or steps, if you will, that'll be coming before the Sewer Utility District Commission as part of this larger project, and maybe directing staff to bring back the design as we move through with the neighbors and the consultant. gives you that check or that comfort level that we're meeting the needs and hearing and addressing those sensitivities. Thank you.
I will only note, I checked with community development earlier today, and the maybe design conversation is twofold. Obviously, there's my portion of the design, right? The engineering, the pumps, the things like that, that I'm not sure anyone is concerned about, actually, in the context of this conversation. But the design would typically go through Planning Commission. It doesn't mean we can't duplicate efforts here, but Planning Commission would typically be the body that would otherwise review said architecture, of course, after we go through the public process. Not that I'm not willing to duplicate it and bring it here if that's what's requested, but Planning Commission is the body that would typically review that architecture.
So that's
Thank you.
statutorily who would review it. We can create the secondary requirement to present it here. Okay, I think that's the more verbose version of what everyone meant by that motion. So thank you for that. Yeah, we'll include input from the neighbors and have it come back before this body.
Okay.
Certainly. Okay, with that amendment clarified, appreciate that, because it's better to be more specific. We have a motion and a second. Any further comments or input? Hearing none, let's call the roll.
Commissioner Tlaco, aye. Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
No.
Commissioner Bratt,
Aye.
Commissioner Gebhardt,
Aye.
Commissioner Nurpin.
Aye. That resolution carries on to the council. Is there a motion to adjourn the Sewer Utility District Commission meeting?
Move
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
Second.
All right, moving on to our council. Well, does anybody want to adjourn? Say yes if you do,
Aye.
no if you don't. Okay, we're adjourned now. Thank you.